Good afternoon, everybody. Okay. As you all know, my name is Joshua Service. I'm going to give you guys a brief introduction about myself, and I'm going to get everybody to take a turn and do the same. I went to Martin Van Buren High School in Queens Village. Yeah. I grew up in Southside Jamaica, Queens, and Crown Heights, Brooklyn. You guys got me quick. Okay. Another thing about me, as I told you guys earlier, I have 21 siblings. Something that I'm currently doing now, I work for the DOE. I'm an operating engineer. I'm a fireman for John Adams High School. And my plan for the future is to get into city council. And now, thank you. So now I'll have Sarani. Okay.
My name is Sarati Henry. I went to Cultural Academy for the Arts and Science. Graduated this year. I haven't started college yet, but I will be starting college next year during January. I have two sisters. The middle child. I grew up with a single mother. Also, a dream of mine for the future is to own my own business in sales and real estate, affordable housing, and stuff like that.
Okay, my name is Sean Marshall. I went to Grand Street campus. I'm the oldest of 4 siblings. Currently, at this moment, I work at Social Security. Something I would want to do in the future, well, I'm starting to do now, is obviously work with Harris, but I would love to run my own program for kids that were in my situation and know that they can get out of it.
Okay.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Renato Taylor. I went to William E. Grady High School in Coney Island. Siblings, I have an older brother, 2 younger brothers, no sisters. I made a lot of sisters. I am the community assistant school aide at PS 59 Bedside, Brooklyn. Plans for the future, just continue to support students in temporary housing or wherever that looks, continue to be a mentor to the next generation. Like Sarati, do business as well, because that's where it is.
Hi, everyone. My name is Joy Lenny, affectionately called JoJo. And I went to Juan Mao Campos Secondary School in Williamsburg, Brooklyn. I was there from middle school all the way through high school. And I have one brother, younger brother, but not by much. And I currently work for a nonprofit organization trying to increase the participation of people with disabilities in international exchange programs. So opportunities to intern, study, work, research, teach abroad. And plans for the future, right now I'm trying to figure that out. I love to travel, so I hope to do that a little more, but ultimately I hope to continue to serve my community and increase access for people with disabilities in general.
Thank you everyone.
And also I've graduated from NYU, so I've been working for the past few years.
Congratulations. Okay, so my next question for everyone here, including myself, have you guys ever envisioned sitting in front of DOE staff and conducting a student panel such as this? Anybody could take it.
Yes, I can start. Spoke last, but I think I've done a couple of these panels in the past, if not at one of these conferences, and I didn't think I would be doing these, especially not as like a very, very shy 8th grader when I first got into the system. But I think these panels really provide more personal insight into the types of situations that your students might be in. So definitely appreciate the opportunity and your time to listen.
Okay, next, specifically, I want to hear from Sean.
Okay. So for me, at one point, no. I didn't see myself actually coming up and speaking in front of anybody about my situation because for me, it took a while to accept. And it took a while to be okay with speaking to anybody about it because I had to accept my situation for myself before I was ready to share. And I mean ready to share with anybody. And then now, today, with the person I am, I feel comfortable telling anybody about my situation because I feel like it's always something anybody can learn from, and then maybe one day it can help someone else who was in my situation when I was younger.
Okay, next, Ronaldo.
I know, surprisingly, no, I didn't envision myself being able to do this. I might seem like I have a little bit of confidence, no, because I was originally like that fly on the wall, like no one knew was there. Imagine my size, but no one really knew was there. So, I think in terms of like what I'm looking to like inform here is just to share more so you guys are more informed about like what some of your students might be experiencing, and that can actually just by understanding a little bit more of the experience, you're able to go back and connect with your students better. Because sometimes you hear that like, oh, teachers and staff, they're disconnected from the students. This will allow you to kind of bridge that gap in some sense. So yeah.
Okay, now Serrano.
I've worked with smaller panels, like maybe 5 people, but never such as a large panel like this. Trying to like bridge the gap between this education system, the schools, and students in temporary housing. To me, this is important and a great deal.
Okay, thank you. When it came down to me envisioning speaking to this panel, something specific always came to me. Because of the SIMBA program, there was a public speaking course that we were given. So when it comes down to me speaking to people, I can easily envision it because that's something I always wanted to do. And sometimes, you know how people say, oh, just picture a crowd naked. No, I just picture a crowd just as much I would picture myself, just eager to listen, learn, and just, be an intriguing set of people. So when it came down to this, it's just, it's like second nature, okay? Now, as we all were reviewing today and witnessing, you guys were in your breakout groups. You guys know why we're here. We're here to speak about homelessness. So specifically with you guys, can you guys recall or tell all of us about the moment that you guys first became homeless?
The first moment when I realized we became homeless is I saw my mother crying. I was like 6, maybe 7. The lady above us had flooded out, like she just left her sink running with a bunch of stuff in it, and it just flooded out the building. That was the first moment I realized that I had became homeless, when I see my mother crying and our stuff was outside. I really didn't understand what the term homeless meant at that age. I'm just thinking, oh, it's fine, But as I grew older, I realized what it was.
For me, it had to be when I went to Path. And I'm not talking about the current Path. I'm talking about the old Path with the trailers and the connecting. That situation, just the way it felt like an assembly line, the way it just felt like, I don't know, that world at that day, just everything felt gray. Like it just felt like a very old movie, and I understood what was going on. I looked around and I seen kids' faces, the parents' faces. I seen the workers' faces, the guards, and everyone just seemed like no one wanted to be there, including myself. But it was the realization that, I had nowhere else to go. It was getting on that bus and then going to an overnight shelter because they couldn't take us to it. They couldn't place that day. And then just going into just like this little apartment, having to put sheets on the bed, sleep there for the night, then go back and do the same thing the next day. I think that's when I really realized like the gravity of my situation, and like that I didn't have no place that I could feel comfortable at that time. That's when I truly felt like I was homeless.
I think that I was homeless for longer than I realized. But the first moment that really comes to mind when I'm asked this is it all happened really fast. So I lost my mom to cancer during the summer. And yeah, it was within a month. So I lost my mom early in August. And then by the second week of August, my grandmother, my brother, and I were in a family shelter. And I remember we had gotten support from a food pantry we frequently went to for years. And we realized that we couldn't stay in the situation that we were currently in, which was living in a 2-bedroom apartment with 10 people all together. And we went to PATH on a very, very early morning and stayed there until very, very late at night. We didn't go prepared. We didn't have anything with us. We didn't understand what the process was gonna be like. And my grandma also only speaks Spanish. So a lot of the times I was translating for her, trying to help her understand what was going on. But as I got deeper into the system, I learned that I had been homeless for as long as I can remember living in this country. I had been in shelter system previously after losing my home in a fire. And then I had started living in doubled-up situations. So I didn't really know that was considered homelessness until I started talking more about it.
For me, it was a little different. I think I can recall things being a little challenging before I noticed that's what it was. I remember the cold nights because there was no heat, no light, food was scarce. And then it came to the point, I remember coming home from school one day, it was like kind of like around this time when it was already dark outside, but we lived in the basement at that point in time. Just come in and I'm going down the stairs to go into our space. And I don't know if you've ever experienced it, that red eviction letter was just posted on the door. So like for me, it's because I came home before my mom probably at that time. So it was just like, whoa. It's not like something my mom had the time to break to me and say, hey, this is happening, let's prepare for it. No, it's just like, this is it, you gotta go. And then like Sean, similarly, just going to PATH, staying there the whole day, the transition into the overnight. I think we got lucky finding somewhere that fast because it was a whole family and we were already in school, so we had to, like get somewhere so we can continue school. I guess I don't think I can consider that lucky, but yeah.
Thank you, Ronaldo, and thank you, everyone. Okay, the moment that I became homeless, as I mentioned earlier, I was a victim of a house fire. So it was me and my siblings and my mom all in the house, and my dad had left for work. So we're all in the house, and it was an electrical fire, by the way, so our refrigerator had blew up in the kitchen. So now, my mom is in a far room, all the way away from the kitchen, and, she's getting very frantic because she's hearing things, and my room was right by the kitchen. So I slept through the whole thing until I was being woken up by one of my older brothers. And now, when it came down to that, we were all evacuated outside, and one of our neighbors saw like the flames of the fire through a window. And, we came outside and we're just staring, and it's like, damn, this is it. And we thought that we would never be placed in a home ever again. So now, as I'm watching the flames and everything, I'm just a little kid. It was probably like 7th grade. And I'm just, outside, no shirt, no shoes. I was just wearing literally boxers, just standing out there just watching it. I'm watching my mother cry, and my siblings and I, they were like, we didn't even know what to say. We were just saying thank God that everyone else was able to wake up and we were able to get out. So that was the moment that I first was like, damn, we're homeless. Who's gonna help us? And then throughout that process, we were taken to the Red Cross. They placed us in a hotel for about 2 days. Even the hotel, like I said, 2 days, it wasn't enough. We had to sleep in one of my dad's work vans. We had to sleep in a park. And then eventually we all gathered up our stuff. And like I said earlier, I'm coming from Southside Jamaica, Queens at the time. I wasn't familiar with the Bronx, and that's when we headed down to Path. And in Path, that's when we learned about all the processes and what sources they had available for us, especially with that size of a family, to perfectly house us. But that was my experience when I first, narrowed it down that, damn, I'm homeless. Now I'm going on to the next question. Did you being homeless, and this is for everybody, impact you in an educational manner? Like, when it came down to your assignments, did you ever just think like, damn, I can't do this? Or you just thought about your situation, you didn't want to go to school because people would find out that you were homeless? But I'm gonna go on this one first, and then give everybody a chance. I was coming from Flatbush, that's where my shelter was. And like I said, I was going to Martin Van Buren in Queens Village. So just traveling over there, I always begged my mom, can I get a hardship transfer or something? Because, my travel was 2 hours and 30 minutes, especially if the trains weren't running in a winter day. It was just very hectic. And sometimes I just wanted to give up. I didn't want to do this. But because of the Simba program and me becoming the captain of my school's track team, that motivated me the most to just continue going to school. Other than that, I'm not going to sit here and just be like I was a perfect student. No, I had my fair share of bad class experiences, But I had to keep on pushing myself and motivating myself because nobody could do it for me but me. But thank you.
I would say at that point, absolutely, because I know my grades dropped because I can see it in the report cards and all of that, but I didn't care. I got my own thing I got to deal with. I need to figure out how to make money so I can feed my family right now. And I was about 14, 15 at that point in time, but that's the only thing that was on my mind because that was the most important thing to me. I understood, yes, school, yeah, okay, I get it, but you don't get it, So that's what it was for me. I need to make money now.
For me, when we first became homeless, we moved from shelter to shelter a lot, and it was difficult trying to settle in one class. It was at one point I was in a classroom, and the classroom was majority Spanish kids. So the teacher, she spoke Spanish majority of the class. I'm sitting in the English class, not understanding what she's teaching because it's in another language. I had trouble making friends because every time I would make friends, I would wind up having to switch shelters due to my medical reasons why I needed to find a shelter suitable for me. So it was kind of difficult. My grades did drop. I went from a let's say A to B student to a C to D student, switching schools, not getting everything that I needed. And I continued to try, and I wouldn't say excelled, but I made sure to get my education as best as I can.
For me, it was, so I eventually started acting out. And what I mean by acting out was when I remember that time, I just had a lot going on in my head. Like going home and the stress of just being in a place where you just didn't feel comfortable, it was just depressing. And then going to school, and I didn't convey to my teachers what was going on. I didn't tell anybody what was going on. So it was just like when I get homework assignments, I would half do them, or I wouldn't put my full effort in because my attention was always somewhere else. My thoughts were always somewhere else. And at that time, I wasn't thinking like, okay, this is the gateway that can help me get out. I was just thinking like, I got stuff going on at home. Is this really should be my top priority? Which of course, as a kid and a student, that should be your top priority. But when you're facing the situation we face, that's not the first thing on your mind. As it should be, but it's not. What we're thinking about is, okay, am I gonna go home tonight and they tell us we gotta pack up and go because we can't be there tomorrow? Am I gonna go home and is everything gonna be okay? Is my mom gonna have to sit there and talk to me about another situation or what our next move is? That's what I'm thinking about. So when I'm in class, I'm daydreaming. When I'm in class, I'm writing notes, but I'm not writing notes. I'm not really focusing on an assignment. And it took me a while, and it took me this actual program. When I say that this program actually helped me highly educationally wise, it did, because it helped me surround around people who were going through the same thing and then tell me, like, school's important. You need to pick up your grades. Trust me, this is to help you out. So definitely my junior year definitely was impacted the most by the situation I was in.
I was already going through a rough time when I landed in shelters. Like, my mom had been battling cancer for a few years, and so my grades were already on the floor. And so, but she did instill in me very early on that education was important, and as a person with a disability, I already deal with enough misconceptions about my ability. And so I saw school as a safe haven. And if it wasn't for the teachers and the staff that made sure that I was supported and knew that I had value, I probably wouldn't have cared enough to try and get my grades back up. I graduated as valedictorian of my high school class. And I share this, but it was not an easy road. Like, some of the difficult things that I had to overcome were things like being able to participate in after-school programs. As a student with a disability, like, I had to take the school bus home and back. And so it was a matter of fighting for that access to have a school bus for after-school hours. It was things like not having access to internet, which the Simba and ASEP program helped with a lot. And even like at family shelters, they often have like a computer room and things like that, but it's very difficult to have access to that. So being able to obtain access to Wi-Fi and internet was very hard. I often like stayed in after-school programs just so I could do my homework. Like, it wasn't for recreational purposes. And then also, there were things that like my school did not think about in ahead. Like, I learned a couple of months before graduation as a senior that I was at a risk for not graduating because I was not getting gym credits. I was like, I don't go to gym class. They told me not to go to gym class because I don't participate in gym. They're like, oh, well, because you don't go to gym class, you're probably not going to be able to graduate. Like, I've done enough work. I've done all this. So I, like, having Mr. Harris be able to advocate and make sure that I had access to a special education physical gym class. And then from advocating for myself, I found out that like there were 4 other students in my school that were not receiving their gym credits because they didn't have access to a gym class. So it wasn't easy. It was a constant fight to get access to certain things to make sure that I could graduate. So it impacted a lot.
Okay, thank you. How did being homeless, this is for Renato first, how did being homeless impact your social life with making friends?
That's tough because what friends, you know, like really and truly, who am I gonna tell? I'm not telling anybody this. You know, especially like when it first happened, for me, I kind of blamed my family a little bit because it's like you couldn't help me. So my extended family, no one was there to help me. So I'm like, if my family couldn't help me, what are my friends gonna do for me? So it kind of created this thing where I was like a bit isolative, if that's the word. I'm gonna keep this to myself. So me keeping things to myself doesn't really allow you to make friends. So it definitely impacted social life. And I saw like, I had other people, my mom specifically had to tell me like how I thought I was just sad, but there's an actual clinical thing for that called depression. So, you know, those are like some of the results of that. But at some point, you know, being connected to Simba kind of allowed that to foster and really, you know, allow me to not only make friends and find brothers and sisters, but to be able to just be sociable again. Yeah.
Sarana?
So in the beginning, moving from shelter to shelter was very difficult because making friends wasn't really like my main goal. But once we got settled into a shelter, and I went to school 6th grade year, and then all my friends used to be like, yo, you want to come over, chill? I was like, nah, I can't, because being in the shelter, you have curfew, you can't spend the night out, it's a lot of rules you have to follow, and I couldn't participate in nothing. So, and then it was one day I was sitting in class, and then I had told all my classmates about my living situation, because the night before I was talking to my mother, and she says, if your friends can't accept you for the nice, kind-hearted person you are, then they're not your friends at all. So I told them, and to my surprise, they treated me the same. I was still a friend to them. And then I told people I trust, and I can't say they're my friends. I can say I see them more as family due to the fact that you're able to accept me for my living situation. And, you know, it was just like, you know, we still hung out, we still got to do things, but it was like they know I had to be home for a certain time. They know I had rules to follow. So it was more of like finding the right people to make friends with, not anybody who just walks up and says, I'm your friend, you tell them, and then they just start making fun of you because of that. So it was difficult in the beginning, but it got better towards the end.
Sean?
So for me, it was, I didn't tell anybody. Like, I don't think I told anybody until maybe the last few months of high school. And for me, to be honest, I was embarrassed. So I was embarrassed, and I just didn't feel like anybody would understand. So I kept it to myself. My friends would invite me to go stay at their house, and I just wouldn't do it. Or they'd be like, hey, you know, can I come hang out at your house? And I just wouldn't. And then I would always have an excuse. I would always have some reason why I couldn't or I didn't want to. And I just didn't feel comfortable. But that was myself. Like, I didn't like my situation, and I felt like no one else would understand my situation or no one else would accept it. So it took me a while. Definitely when I entered this program and I found people my age going through the same thing I was going through, I knew that they would understand. But still, in school-wise, with those friends, it was just like, you know, high school kids, they can be cruel. And I'm not saying that my friends were, but I was saying that I wasn't comfortable taking the chance that one day they could be. And it was just my distrust. I developed a distrust to everybody. It wasn't anything anybody did, but it was just like, I don't want to risk anything. I've already suffered a lot. I've already went through a lot. I just don't want to deal with something that I can control. And I felt like I can control that because I can share my personal business with people when I feel like it. And at that time, I just didn't feel like anybody should know.
Jolene?
Yeah, so I think I only had like 2 friends in high school. I spent a lot of time just reading during lunch periods. Like I wouldn't talk to anybody. I was very shy, but also I didn't want to have to tell anybody like what was going through my head or talk about it because I was in school, and so I just wanted to think about school. I didn't want to think about everything else. And there were a lot of, like we've mentioned, there's a lot of rules with living in shelters. And I remember like one time, this like severely impacted my emotional health because I got invited to like a Sweet 16 party for a friend I had met like at a summer camp. And I had said, yes, I would love to go. It was like the first time I had been invited to a birthday party. So I was like, yes, I want to go. And then I went to shelter and like I told them, oh, I have someone that's gonna come pick me up and take me to the party and come back. And they were like, oh, well, your whole family has to go. Like, well, no. It was only one person invited. They only invited me. And I remember like crying in my room because I didn't know how to explain the situation to my friend that had invited me. And I remember like calling different people and asking them for advice. And eventually I was able to figure out a way for my grandma and brother to be out of the shelter during the time that I was going to the party. And so after that instance, whenever I got invited anywhere or to do anything else, I would just say no because I didn't want to have to go through the emotional turmoil of trying to figure out how to participate or how to be a part of something.
Thank you. Okay, so when it came down to my social life and making friends, just like what Ronaldo said, I also became very isolated. So if my friends had invited me to any parties or events, I would not tell them when I was leaving. So anytime they would ask me, how are you getting home? I'm like, home? And I would just avoid the questioning and everything. I would just, if I was able to take a bus or a train, I would like secretly look at the schedule and when that's going to come, just so that they wouldn't see me leave. I made sure that I didn't make friends around the shelter that I was at because I didn't want anybody seeing me entering or leaving a building. I just didn't want anybody in my personal business at all. My teachers didn't know, even like, dating young, nobody knew that I was even in that circumstance. So I just became very private. My social life lessened, but I tried to, find people who connected to my situation. So that's what also kept me, in my school. I didn't mind traveling the distance because I found that other people were coming from that same area as me, but I still didn't go in depth with my situation. Until I got into the Simba program, I was more open. I was like, wow, okay, there are people facing what I face, and there are people I can speak up to and open up to, but even so, it was still a challenge because I would look at it like not everybody, are in this situation specifically the same way I got into it. So I would just be very selective on who I spoke to. I would think that I was being joked on. I just didn't want anybody knowing that. Okay, so. Last question. Okay. How did being homeless affect your relationship with your parents and how your parents were acting just in the household?
So for me, it was me, my brother, and then my little brother and my mother, and a very small room. So you can imagine 4 people in a small room tensions add up quick. My mother was irritated. I was irritated because I'm a teenager, so I'm already a problem. But then we're in a small place, so now I'm really a problem. So, and then I'm a boy. So obviously, you know, I'm gonna get on her nerves, and then she gonna get on mine, and then we butted heads a lot. And then obviously with me messing up in school, we butted heads even more. And at the time, I wasn't thinking about how she was feeling. I was just upset. I was upset at everybody. But like now, I see, like she was going through a lot too. Of course, she didn't want to be in the situation she was in. It wasn't by choice. And just like it wasn't my choice, it wasn't her choice. And it took a little while, but you know, we had problems then, but me and my mother are very close now. Like very close. Our relationship is like I can go to her, tell her anything, and she tells me anything because we went through a lot together. And we've built the relationship where now it's like, okay, we've been through worse. So whatever you're going through now, you know you can tell me because we've been through the hard times. So I'm here to support you through anything. It's just like my situation, it was tough, but I'm happy for it because it let me know what I value the most in life. And it let me see, like, you know, what I should appreciate and what isn't so important.
The relationship with me and my mother was a very bumpy one. We would argue a lot, butt heads a lot. You know, sometimes it'd be me like trying to like walk away, but there was nowhere to walk to. So I used to just go in the bathroom, close the door, slam it shut, lock it, play music. Or like, for like when I was outside, we used to argue, I should just walk off and go about my business. I would always come back home eventually, well, later on that day. Or like my mother was like always like in my personal space, in my life. I would say like any female friend I had, she would be like, is that your little girlfriend? That's your little girlfriend? I'm like, no, that's just a friend of mine. She know where you live? I'm like, no, mother, it's not like that. She was always bothering me. I would always bother her. I used to eat up everything in the fridge. I still do. She used to pack the fridge one day. 3 days later, it's empty. She'd be like, what you do? Got up in the middle of the night, eat the food, cooking in the middle of the night. I used to get on her nerves with all of that. And I kind of blamed, and like in the beginning, I kind of blamed her for our situation. I was like, if it wasn't for you, we wouldn't be in this mess. Me not realizing it's not her fault. It's just, you know, things happen out of our control. So like being a teenage boy, and my mother, she's raised old school, so we argued a lot. We still argue a little, but our relationship has gotten better. And I'm grateful for her for being a strong mother to do her best in raising me. And if it wasn't for her, I would not be sitting up here today.
So I think that, I lived in shelter with my grandmother and my brother, as I mentioned. So our family dynamic was already kind of odd. And what was the hardest thing, I think, was just, I was the oldest of us two, and I had been living in the US for longer than my brother, so he was also learning English when we had ended up in shelter. And so I became sort of a second adult at 13. I had to do a lot of translating, like whenever my grandma had a doctor's appointment, or when she had like meetings with the housing specialist, or anything really, like any events or school parent-teacher conferences, like I was the translator. And I think that it's impacted our relationship past that, because it's kind of hard to get out of that role once you've taken it on. So even to this day, I still kind of play the same role in our dynamic, and it's always been hard for my brother and I to maintain equality, just because of how much responsibility is placed on me as the oldest. of just being able to support. So I think, yeah, it's a work in progress.
Yeah. So much resonated with hearing what they were saying. One of the things that I saw was that my mom had to become this strong woman, not because that's what she wanted to do, because that's what she had to do. And it's one of those things where you hear it and it's like, okay, and it's this thing where it's set as the, so positive. I appreciate and empower that, but is that necessarily what she wanted to do? She could have been just a regular, person, but because of challenges, she had to become this person. And it definitely affected our relationship. She had to do a lot and put a lot of responsibility on us. For me, there's that person that's missing from the story, so we had to grow up faster, to step up, to be able to do a lot more sooner than we necessarily needed to, make sacrifices in other areas that, wanted to be able to go out and do all the things you do as a young teenager and just live life and have fun and have experiences and whatever it is. No, you gotta be responsible as a teenager now. So that definitely created a lot of shifts. I have an older brother. He probably did the same thing that I did. It was just kind of like just jumped straight into the isolation, just kind of like didn't really talk to much people. My younger brother, same. I think he was too young to really understand, but to this day, I kind of see how like going through that affected him, because he didn't really develop the skills that he really needed to survive, because he was forced to do so many surviving, that like it feels like he's not really thriving at this point, that he should be at his age. But so there's a lot of that, like other things that you have to do, you're forced to do that, so you can't do the normal things that everyone else is doing. You miss out on some things. So it definitely affects relationships, not just in your family, but like once you try to step out those doors.
Okay, so when it came down to me and my parents' relationship, my dad made too much money at the time, but he had very bad credit, so he wasn't able to be in the shelter with us. He had to sleep in one of his vans, and it had like a bed option in the back, so the seat would recline. Or he would do extra overtime and catch extra shifts so that, because he worked in a hospital, so that, they would like give him like one of the gurneys to sleep on, or he would like sleep in his break room and, stay on the clock out, but stay in the building. When it came out to my mother, my mom and my dad barely got to see each other at those moments, but he would drive to the shelter. Like I said, he wasn't able to live with us. If you weren't a resident, you weren't able to come in. There was no visitation. My mom, she had to make sure that we all were present. If we were under the age of 18, we weren't able to check into the shelter and go upstairs. So that would also stress my mother out, because she would have to be there presently, So now picture all your kids coming from a different location for school. My sister went to school in Manhattan. Me and my other siblings, 4 of us, went to school in Queens. And every borough, almost every borough, one of her kids went to school. So picture her having to go down the stairs while she's cooking, or the elevator wasn't working one day. She had to like bring the food down with her, and like, so much was just going on. And I know my parents were very stressed out, but as much as the services that they had were as much as they could do, you know what I'm saying? Like, as much as services were given to us, there was a limitation to what these people could actually do for us. So she was very grateful for those things that they were able to do for us, and how we were able to maintain a lifestyle and a system in that meantime. But she was very grateful to get out of the system, and when we got permanently housed, everything was different. So my parents are way better now, very happy now, because we're not in that situation anymore. But my last question for the moment is, what advice do you want to give these DOE staff members to take on to the students in their schools? What do you think is best for them to do to assess their students' situations?
I would say be patient, but also be strong with them. Because I think that when you're patient with us, but you're also being stern, you're giving us a set goal and you're driving us, that shows you care. It's a difference between telling me, okay, you're messing up. I don't know why you're messing up, but you gotta figure it out. And then it's like, I don't know what's going on with you, but look, here's the opportunity. Here's the opportunity I can present to you and help you if you need my help. I had an English teacher who she was great. And she just, she would always come to me and tell me, you know you're better than this, and you know you can do better. And she's like, I'm not gonna baby you, but I'm gonna tell you that if you show me the effort, I will be behind you 100%. And for me, that was different because I felt like she actually cared. And if I feel like when us in this situation, our biggest problem is we feel like we tell you and then you either treat us differently or you just, you act like there's something wrong with us. We do want to be treated normally, but we also know that our situation isn't normal. And we also, like, feeling like someone cares is leaps and bounds more than just feel like we're a part of a regular system. So that, like, I can't preach this enough. When you show you care, it does so much more. Because having people who care, having people who push you, having people who's like, look, I know you have other things going on, but look, your education is important, definitely changes. Because if I didn't have the 3 or 4 people, 3 or 4 teachers and DOE employees behind my back, I would not be on the stage. I would have not graduated. High school, I wouldn't have graduated anything. I would not be where I am. So I think that's like one of the biggest things.
Yeah, I want to add on without taking away from what he said, what Sean said, because he kind of touched on that, hit the nail, showing that you care. I know sometimes, I'm not sure who's here because they have to be here, but I hope everyone's here because they want to be here and they want to be able to take something back to help their students. But it's definitely about being there and being present. But one of the things for me, I didn't learn about a lot of my rights, my STH rights, until it was somewhat too late for me to even ask for those resources or help. No one told me, even though I've been in the situation for a while. So maybe even having a conversation about, hey, do you know you're entitled to these things? So if you're not advocating for them, they have the opportunity to even grow and self-advocate. Say, okay, I remember you telling me I have access to these things, these resources are here and it's set aside for me. How do I take advantage of it? I need this, just having the space to be able to come to you to say, these are some things that I need and I know I have the right to access them. That's one thing I want to add without taking away from what Sean said.
Yeah, I would, just to add on to that, I think the most important thing is that you show you care and you show you support. I think that our alumni speaker earlier, Nadine, mentioned, like, sometimes just a smile can mean a lot. But to say that encouraging your students to advocate for themselves can teach them the skills they're going to need to continue to survive through the situations that they're in. So encouraging them to ask for help, but not just to ask, knowing that, like, they're going to ask and something is going to happen. Like, it's hard enough to have to ask for help to build up that courage. And then if a student comes up to you and says, I need help with this, and then you just don't help or you don't know what to do. Reach out to other folks, reach out to your colleagues, reach out to Wayne Harris, or like just look for that support, because if the student has already built up the confidence to ask you for help, they really need it. So I would just encourage advocacy, but also put in the action. There's a lot of staff out there that go the extra mile. Sometimes you're not able to go the extra mile. Like, for example, I had a guidance counselor in my school, college guidance counselor, who supported me through the college application process. And she would go with me to the orientations or to visit campuses because my grandma didn't understand the process. And so she would explain to her what the process was, and she would show up to these orientations with me so that she could digest the information and take it back to my grandmother. And that was taking away from me the responsibility of having to explain everything when I myself didn't understand a lot of it.
Thank you so much, and sorry to cut it short for us, but we wanted to give you guys an opportunity to ask us some questions. So based off all the information that you have received for us just now, so do I have any volunteer?
In the back.
In the back first? Okay.
So recently we just moved from our apartment in Coney Island. If you know where Gateway Mall is, they put up some new buildings over there, and my mother and I just recently moved in over there. It's a nice one bedroom, and we're making it work.
My grandmother, brother, we live in the Lower East Side, Manhattan by Chinatown now. We're all still together, all still working hard to maintain our permanent housing.
For me, my family, we live in East New York, and we've learned the harder part, of doing it, but now we're actually looking to start the process of buying a home for our permanency.
So me and my family now live in the Bronx. We live in South Bronx, and been there for what now, 4 or 5 years, and things are going good. And like Renato said, I've actually been researching now for like a year on like home equity and things, and where's the best place to buy a house so we don't have to experience this again.
Okay, so with my family now, we have a house in Canberra Heights, Queens, a 2-family, and now we have a 3-family home, including a basement, in Crown Heights, Brooklyn. It was a milestone to get into those properties, but we did what we could, and we try to stay in the real estate route actually. Does anybody else have a question? I know you put your hand up.
Good morning. First and foremost, I just want to shout out that there's 4 male students of color. I was advocating for my male students, so it's always good to see that you guys are doing well.
Thank you.
My question is, how did you get from, how did the segue happen? I've been a social worker in a school for 4 years. Family therapy and all these other things in other places, right? And this is the first time that I'm understanding what STH funds really are supposed to be. So I'm gonna take a page from Wayne's book and I'm gonna start snitching when I go back to work. But I want to know, what was
Okay, so specifically with the shelter that I was in, there were like flyers advertised for the program. So my mom had one time said, "Oh, look at this, Josh, look at this. They have this program that's on Saturdays, and you should join it." I said, "Mom, what's in the program? Why am I gonna go to that?" She was like, "They specifically help like homeless kids." I was like, "I got nothing to do, so." And then when I finally joined the program, like, to me, it was like a decision that I could never regret. I can't, because I learned how to cut hair. We had a lacrosse team on the program before, learned how to play lacrosse. We took so many college tours, and without me actually being homeless, it's not something bad to say, actually. If I was never homeless in the first place, I would have never been introduced to the program. So the bridge that you're speaking of was literally just being homeless. Because I was homeless, I was able to connect to those resources. Yeah, if I was never homeless living in the shelter, my apologies, I would have never got that pamphlet. I would have never saw that flyer. I would have never, but, things happen.
You only got time, one answer, I'm sorry. Gonna take two more questions, and then I gotta release y'all. Please don't forget to evaluate, scan the QR code on the last page of the brochure. But let's get another question.
I have a similar question. What recommendations would you give someone that works in the schools that's struggling with kids that aren't temporary housing, but when you talk about these programs, they're just so used to so many resources being given to them that they can't just find the benefit in attending these programs. So a lot of my kids struggle with, committing to Simba or ASSET. And I've spoken about the benefits. So what recommendations you guys have for us in having the youth just realize how important it is to connect to these programs?
All right. So speaking,
Let me answer that question. Can I answer the question?
I wanted to.
Go ahead, you go.
Okay.
Come on.
So
Short version.
Okay, so the reason why I started coming to the program was during the summer bridge. They had like a summer youth / summer bridge. You come, you get paid, and I found out how good the program was. So like telling a student a little bit about or some incentives would help the students want to actually see what this is about. Weekly Metro cards, laundry cards, gift cards, trips, all of that are reasons why I realized the program was so beneficial and helpful, as well as I get free after-school tutoring, and Mr. Harris also makes sure you eat during after school. If you don't have food at home, you call him like, "I don't got food." Sometimes he send you food if he can, or he'll try to give you a recommendation to an area where to get food. He makes sure that you're set and you're okay. So it's about communicating with them, yo, you go to this program, you get a weekly Metro card, you're able to come to school, or your mom needed to go to work, you give it to her, you go to work, and you do what you gotta do, and things will look up for you.